wondrous beasts of YouTube. Brandon Valentine here, and today I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about tips for beginner guitarists. Now I'm going to do this video in a two-part segment. The first part going to be today, I'm going to talk to you more about your mindset, about the right headspace to be in. And part two, which is going to be much more technical, being able to use real hints and tips actually to just further your skill as opposed to your outlook to the instrument. Little bonus side note, today I'm brutally tired. I have nothing to add to that. So without further ado, onwards towards the list. Number one, challenging yourself. Now, I know that to a lot of people this is going to seem like a very trite and obvious point to say. Challenge yourself, keep on going, keep working hard. But what does challenging yourself actually mean? Now when I say challenge yourself, the first little rule to imagine in that is that you should become comfortable with being uncomfortable. You should really learn to relish in being out of that comfortability zone. You should really learn to be unsettled. You shouldn't just sit there on a Tuesday night and play what you know that you can and stick to that. You should go out and face your inabilities. You should be fully aware of the things you can't do, because that's the first step into being able to do them. It's a little bit like Alcoholics Anonymous. You have to admit there's a problem before you can actually work on it. Find something that's too hard, and you might completely fail at it. You might completely fail at learning a piece of music that's way above your skill level, but even trying is going to be a great experience for you. Because you might pick up little tricks, little things. You might have had to force yourself into a position to do something that you would have never done. And from that you're going to pick up skills. You're going to be able to think on your feet a little more. Try it yourself. Really throw yourself in the deep end and try and teach yourself. Make sure not to pick up bad habits, but make sure that you're challenging yourself. Make sure that you're becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. Number two, remember, no one is a god. Now that's a funny thing to say, but so often I'll hear beginner and intermediate players referring to people who are amazing, legendary players slash Yngwie Malmsteen, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, as gods. They're these intangibly talented, impossible to achieve skills that have been bound up in this divine being. And I can't help but actually be a little annoyed at that attitude, because it will stop you trying to learn their material. It stops you analyzing what they're doing for what they are, another artist like yourself. You want to look at these people and go, okay, how can I do that? Because it is achievable. It's not like they're born with 6 fingers and come from a different planet and it's just unachievable for our bodies and our minds. It can become a hindrance to your progression. It can really just stop you in your tracks if you have that thought of, I'll never be able to do that, because you can. The things that these people all do, all your legendary players, is physically achievable. Writing stuff like they are, or jamming that out, having that music within them, that's a little bit of a different story. That's a very different story. But you can train that too. And yes, some people are born with an inherent rhythm and an ear for tone and color that is absolutely amazing, but it is still a part of your mind that you can exercise. You have to work at that. You really have to go out there and put yourself into the territory that these trailblazers went into. You have to go and find what is going to make you unique. Number three, don't be too hard on yourself, but at the same time, don't big note yourself. There are a few different little things that I see from beginner and earlier levels of intermediate guitarists. So often they'll do one of two things. Either they absolutely can the way they play, downtrod themselves all the time. Oh, I could never do that. Oh, I'm not as good as this person. That's impossible for me. Oh, I'm dead, blah, blah, blah. And this real negative outlook. Or the opposite, where they think, I've got this all in the bag. I've really got this all sorted. I'm as good as the greats. And they're really not. They're really just not. Both of these attitudes are harmful for a bunch of different reasons, but they share a reason, is that it stops your progression in its tracks pretty hard. Always is talking about you being at something you're not good at. You start to really believe it. And if you believe that you're absolutely terrible at something, you're not going to find inspiration and you're not going to be influenced and inspired to keep going at it. And if you think you've got it in the bag, if you think you're just an absolute killer, you're going to stop in your tracks too, because you're not even going to listen to your own playing. These people who think like that, they listen to their own playing in the most banal way. They honestly listen to it, they're like,
yeah, I just hit a good note and that's it. I am God's gift to the stringed instrument.
and I've seen it time and time again. You have to be honest to improve. Even being honest about the things you are really good at. And for the people who think that they've absolutely nailed this thing on guitar, that they've absolutely nailed it and they've got it in the bag, no matter how good you are, no matter how good you are, even if you're a high school student and you are absolutely without question the best musician in your high school, you're in for a rough surprise when you join the music world outside of that. Because you are going to meet people who are going to shred you off the table infinitely better than you. And they are going to crush you, and they will crush that false confidence that you are putting forward if that's your attitude. And also, truth be told, on a bit more of a cut and dry kind of serious note, other musicians don't want to work with that. Other musicians do not want to work with someone who thinks that they're amazing but does not deliver. As a little bonus tip, don't fetishize gear. Now, I love guitar gear, I'm a person who loves buying new stuff, I do it all the time, but unfortunately beginner guitarists can sometimes have a belief that this piece of gear is going to make them a better player. Oh, the gates are going to open when I get that amp, when I get that guitar, when I get that effects pedal, whatever it is. You're projecting your want to just immediately get better onto an item, which means that the marketing is working, but it won't. Mainly what really good gear does is makes a really good player more able to express. And also, not to be a bit boring, but just good old-fashioned reliability. Now that's the only thing you should obsess over as a beginner guitarist, is something that reliably stays in tune. A guitar that doesn't stay in tune is the quickest way for a player to just stop. The first thing you should always check out is your tuning situation. Get a friend who's a guitarist, maybe set it up, or maybe even pay for it to go to a luthier to set up. Maybe it costs you $100, but they do an absolute killer job. Even if it is a cheap guitar, a set-up guitar is a beautiful thing. But do that instead of looking at the $3,000 custom shop guitar and thinking that that's going to solve your problem, because it won't. It just won't. Man, I can be a bit of a grump sometimes when I'm tired. Number 4. It's consistency. Consistency, consistency, consistency. No one learns things in one night. But as you progress through your journey, you'll see this a lot more. That things take months to really absorb. Something I tell my students a lot is, unfortunately, there is just no quick way to learn things. There isn't. Eventually the clouds part and that thing just becomes second nature. That's the reality of learning guitar and the craft in general, pretty much any art form. You should be, as a beginner, in all truthfulness, bare minimum you should be setting aside 3 big decent slots a week. At least an hour each slot. You know, the beautiful thing with this is the more that you do it, the more the clouds part, the more you get to the promised ground of where you want to be as an artist, and the more inspiring it is, so the more you do it. It's the opposite of a downward spiral, it's an upward spiral of artistic positivity. It's where you start being able to do the things you want to do, and so of course you're going to play every day because you can get what you want out of it. You don't have to think of it as like cold hard practice. Oh, Brandon's going to make me do this for 4 hours a week and that's really boring. No, what you're doing is furthering your language skills in the ability to express emotions that words can't. That's pretty good. I think that's a good one. I might keep that. And number 5, you're only as good as your influences. Now this is gonna get mean, and I'm sorry, but the reality of it is, if you consume mediocre art, you're going to give off mediocre art. Even just on a technique side of it, you want to make sure that your influences are the best. You want to make sure that your influences are broad, and you want to make sure that you are listening to people who you can actually be taught something by. You know what? I'm actually going to do just a whole nother video, a whole nother rant about influences and their effects on genres, because I know I'm going to edit this down so it's a nice easy thing for everyone to consume as a YouTube video, but I just chatted in my room for about half an hour into the camera angrily about people sticking to their genres too much. Anyway, moral of the story, you're only as good as your influences, so make sure your influences are the best and dig deep to find what the best and most varied influences are, and just bring in influences from other genres. Make sure you don't just stick to one thing. That summed up half an hour of rant. And anyway, that's my list of mindset tips for beginner guitarists. There's going to be another part to this, a part 2, a sequel, if you will, which is going to focus pretty much exclusively on just technical tips for beginner guitarists. Things that I've seen as a teacher and just as a musician around town that beginner guitarists will always tend to gravitate to. Little habits that you can get yourself out of to help bolster your playing and further your musical journey. I'm Brandon Valentine. Thank you very much for enjoying. Click like, subscribe. I always have to say these things sarcastically because I feel sick to my stomach trying to sell myself to you. Yeah, click the bell for notifications so we can always stay in touch. Ooh yeah, virtual buddies.